everyone. Good afternoon. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Christine Anderson. I am the Anti-Trafficking and Runaway and Homeless Youth Coordinator here at OCFS in the Division of Youth Development and Partnerships for Success. In that role, I serve as the Program Manager for the Safe Harbor New York program, and I am thrilled to welcome you to our 6th Annual Anti-Trafficking Summit and our 2nd Annual Virtual Summit. Thank you so much for being here on this Monday afternoon. Before we start, I want to go over a few quick housekeeping options. Summit is a week-long event. There are 2 sessions every afternoon with the exception of Friday. The first session begins at 12:30 and the second session begins at 2:30. Zoom links for each session were sent out. If you didn't receive a Zoom link for a session you registered for, please let one of us know and we will get it to you. If you encounter IT issues during the presentation, you can email info@welfareresearch.org and we will put that in the chat for you, and help will be sent your way as soon as possible. And then if you have another issue and you're still involved in the presentation, you can type it in the chat and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Our presentations are being recorded and will be posted a few weeks after the event on both HSLC as well as our OCFS YouTube channel, which is very exciting. So if you have to hop off early, or you liked one so much you want to watch it again, or you have staff who need to see something, or you find that it would be beneficial for, they can log on and check those out after the fact. Certificates, they will be issued after Summit by request only. It is not a standard procedure. If you need one, send your name and email to the human trafficking mailbox, which I will put in the chat as well. And again, we're not going to issue certificates until all of Summit is completed. This does take us a week or 2, so please just be patient with us. We will get it to you, I promise. Next week, you'll receive a post-Summit survey. Please, please, please use this opportunity to provide us with feedback about the event so that we can incorporate your feedback into our future trainings. And lastly, but certainly not least, all participants are automatically muted during the presentation. Each presenter has about 45 minutes of content, and that allows us 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. If you have a question or a comment during the presentation, you can put it in the chat. We do ask that you please make sure that your chat is directed to either everyone or all hosts and panelists, so we make sure we see it. We do try to ask that you hold your questions till the end, but if you have something you want to get off your chest so you don't forget, I know how that goes, type it in the chat. It is being monitored throughout the presentation. We will get to as many questions as time allows. But if we don't get to your question during the live webinar, we will respond to your question via email because we can see the chat after the fact. With all of that said, I am so excited to introduce today's presenters. They are 2 of our very own Safe Harbor folks from the Groom County Crime Victims Assistance Center. Jessica Hyatt, and she is the coordinator of the Groom County Child Advocacy Center for the last 4 years. After her Safe Harbor program graduated, she worked to have the CAC absorb the program as a way to sustain services within her county. She serves as an active member of the Southern Tier Human Trafficking Committee, participates in the Education and Community Outreach Subcommittee of the task force, and runs her own monthly critical team of local professionals who work together to decrease the risk of sexual exploitation in her community. She's presenting alongside Stephanie Mix, who has been a member of the Groom County Safe Harbor Critical Team for roughly 4 years, originally as outreach coordinator and now as a community education and outreach specialist. She also serves on the steering committee of the Southern Tier Human Trafficking Task Force and has been the co-chair of the Outreach and Education Subcommittee for the last 4 years. She has her master's in public administration from Binghamton University. If I say BU, that can mean one too many things, so I want to be clear. I'm super excited to have them here today, so take it away, Jessica and Stephanie.
Okay. Thank you so much, Christine. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, everybody. So like Christine said, I actually in August was recently promoted to the COO of Crime Victims Assistance Center. So I am no longer overseeing the Groom County Child Advocacy Center and Safe Harbor program, although I am supervising the person that was in my position. So I am still going to be very closely associated with the programs, which I'm excited about because they're very near and dear to my heart, obviously. So and she introduced my co-presenter, Stephanie, who I appreciate being here with as well. So like Christine said, we are in our 7th year of programming. We graduated after our 5th year, and a way to sustain our Safe Harbor program, we thought it made sense to put it under the Broome County Child Advocacy Center because we are seeing so many of these youth come through the center anyway. So it just kind of made sense for them to go through the Child Advocacy Center. So a couple years ago, probably about 3 years ago, we applied to OVS to receive funding to provide a case manager specifically for our Safe Harbor program. So not only did we want to know what was happening in our community and to provide education and outreach, but we also really wanted to connect with the youth that we were seeing and be able to provide them case management services and some education. So we do have a case manager that works one-on-one with the youth. It is a completely voluntary service. The youth can meet with us as frequently as they like or as infrequently as they like. We just kind of leave it up to them and what their needs are. But she does a lot of safety planning with them because we do understand that these children are going to unfortunately continue to run away. So when they do run away, we want to make sure that we safety plan with them so they have access to our text line, they have access to our crisis line. We do provide them cell phones if they do not have one, so they can call 911 if they need to. So we just talk to them about if they are unfortunately, experiencing being out of the home, what are some ways that they can continue to keep themselves safe. We do provide the youth with hygiene supplies. We have tons of supplies on hand. Anything from body wash to shampoo, to leggings and sports bras and underwear and socks and all sorts of things, because we don't want the youth to compromise themselves in any way to have their basic needs met. So we always make sure we are readily stocked with these supplies. We're constantly putting bags together for the youth, and our case manager is making those available to them. If they need something that we don't have, we will purchase it for them. And we also try to gear them towards activities that are of interest to them. So we've paid for things with our Safe Harbor funding, such as gym memberships and memberships to the local Boys and Girls Clubs and the YMCAs. And we paid for yoga classes, and just anything that the youth finds interesting is where we really want to gear their interest and, support them as much as they can, and maybe activities in the community that they might not otherwise be able to afford. So that's kind of what we do with the youth. She's a strong advocate for the youth with the other services that they might be getting in the community. She attends a lot of meetings at the schools and helps advocating them on navigating those systems, and just anything that they're kind of needing, we will certainly assist them with. Okay, so in 2020, we received 91 Safe Harbor referrals for the year, which is pretty typical. We usually see about 85 to 90, I would say. So this is kind of right on track. So we wanted to note, because our presentation is really focused on the social media component and what we were kind of seeing through the pandemic in terms of the social media. So these were different referrals that we received, and I know some of them kind of could mean the same thing, but this is what the provider, when referring them to our Safe Harbor program, this is what they indicated on the referral. So we wanted to keep the language the same. So I know that using social media apps inappropriately could kind of mean the same thing as inappropriate use of technology. So they kind of overlap a little bit, but we really wanted to stick with the language that the providers were using on the referral. So you can see we saw a lot of you sending nude photos and videos. Talking to older individuals online, that's usually the highest thing that we see probably. Using social media inappropriately, the apps, using the internet inappropriately, inappropriate use of technology, inappropriate text and uses of the cell phone, and then accessing pornography. So again, a few of these things could kind of overlap. So in March 2020, so over the year of 2020, we saw from the cases from our Child Advocacy Center. In 2019, we had 24 cases that were referred from our Child Advocacy Center to our Safe Harbor program. So then in 2020, we saw an increase to 40 cases from our Child Advocacy Center, which was like a 60% increase. In March alone of 2020, and this is really when we saw during the pandemic, the school starting to close and the kids having to go remote, we saw 27 of our cases that we had in March at the Broome County Child Advocacy Center. 9 offenders were grooming or sexually exploiting children through social media, which we just really took note of that because it just seemed pretty extreme that a third of the cases, the offenders, had that social media component. So we really kind of wanted to take a look at, what was happening during that. So these are the different apps that we pulled from the cases that we were seeing. So we really saw a lot of cases with Kik, Yubo, which Yubo was totally new to me, so I had some education around that one. TikTok, Snapchat, Google Meets, and Chat Roulette. And Chat Roulette was a little bit newer to me too. So yeah, as you can see, these are pretty common apps that youth are typically engaging in. And oh, my mouse is just like flying through these.
There we go. Oh, that image is pixely. I think this is where we have a poll, correct?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So with this, we want to just kind of get a baseline of what you guys are aware of. This is something that I do a lot with parents in education. I kind of test to see what they're aware of so I can kind of give them more information about the ones they aren't aware of and kind of bring focus to the ones that not a lot of parents or providers have heard of that kids have clearly. So go ahead and in the poll there, mark off any that that you've heard of that you're pretty sure you know what they are. Yeah, so this kind of honestly follows a pattern that I was kind of expecting. More people know about Chat Roulette than I was expecting, so that's good to know. It's interesting. But yeah, Yubo is the one that not a ton of people have heard of. I can't see how often it's used by kids generally, but clearly we've had one of our cases did originate there, and we have heard of other cases coming from that app. We are going to get into a few of the apps. I'm going to go over some basics about what the apps do, what kids are using them for, and a little bit of what we've seen on these apps. So if you want to advance the slide, I believe we have. There we go. Okay, so the first one here is Kik, which a lot of people will be familiar with, kind of along the same lines of WhatsApp. A lot of people are familiar with this app if they've got family in international areas, but it's also been used for folks meeting someone online. The reason why it's a popular one, so a freeware instant messaging mobile app used for sending pictures, messages, videos, and other media. It's kind of the same as, any of the messengers that we're used to using, Facebook messengers, things like that. The specific use of this one is it's known for preserving anonymity, because you can register for Kik without the need to provide a telephone number or a valid email address. It's also not then attached to an accompanying social media profile. So whereas in Facebook Messenger, that would at least be combined, or at least in most cases is combined with an actual Facebook account that you can look at. I say usually because there is actually, I believe now with Messenger being its own app on, the Apple Store, I believe you can actually make an account specifically for Facebook Messenger without the accompanying Facebook profile. However, that is more common. With Kik, much like WhatsApp, that is not necessarily the case. So obviously this kind of opens it up for potentially misusing that. If somebody can't go back to that user's identity, it's obviously hard to keep track of who you're speaking to. Yep. Yubo. So, so, some of the text got really tiny there. So Yubo. So this is sometimes called Tinder for kids. I know I didn't ask how familiar people were with Tinder. However, Tinder, for really basic, if you know nothing about it, intro to Tinder, that's a dating app. So you go on there, you get matches that, are in your area. They come up on your screen, and then you swipe left if you're not interested, or swipe right if you are. I think we've all heard references to that app and that technology, the swiping. Obviously, as that's the way that app operates, all what you know about that person is basically just their physical appearance, which is not ideal when you're looking for a romantic partner, but it at least makes a little bit more sense. People know that app for like hookups, so casual encounters, things like that. That might be more acceptable. However, when it comes to Tinder for kids, even if you completely remove that sexual aspect, you're still, at the end of the day, choosing people based on what they look like, right? So in this, it's aimed towards friends. However, you're still choosing those friends based on what they look like. So the app is aimed towards users 13 to 25, good Lord. And technically, so it's 13 to 25, which obviously gives a lot of people pause. Technically, users over 18 have a separate community. However, when you think about, the efficacy of having a separate community, what are the parameters that they're searching for, or they're looking at when people are signing in? Are they really making sure that the 13 to 18 set is actually only 13 to 18? That's kind of hard to judge. And as it says in tiny little print there, the app has 40 million users worldwide. So TikTok we know a lot about, right? I probably don't need to cover this one too much, but it is a site, or it's an app where users can create, watch, and share 15-second videos shot on cell phones. That 15 seconds may have gotten longer, I can't remember, but at any rate, it's less than a minute. You are shooting videos shot on cell phones. I think we've all heard about it because kids are obsessed with it. A lot of people are obsessed with it. The issue comes in with TikTok with obviously anyone can access any of these videos. These things are going out to the general public. But it's also known for its challenges and trending dances. People can do split screen duet videos. The issue comes when those challenges are negative. So we've had issues with a specific challenge called Devious Licks as of recently in a local school system that I work with through a grant with the Department of Health. And they've asked us specifically to get help with dealing with the problem of TikTok and devious licks and stealing and defacing property and, slapping people on the butt because that's the challenge, So it's really led to some real problems for local school districts. And it also, gives that intro for people to see a youth doing a dance. And it might even be like a completely innocent, non-sexual dance, but they're still watching that content and then messaging them later. Oh, I see that you can post up to 3-minute videos. So there you go. So Snapchat is a video and photo sharing app. So Snapchat, I use it all the time with my family members, send pictures, videos back and forth. The big thing about Snapchat is that it disappears after a certain amount of time. You can set that amount of time, but it's often, if you just don't set anything, it's going to be 24 hours. It could be a little bit less. Snapchat also features Snap Map, which will automatically show the location of users to their friends until they disable the setting. So on the map, it'll show like a little figure of you, your little avatar, right where you are. And then it'll show your friends right where they are, which can be nice if you're looking for your family, you know, what the Find My Friend app does. However, with Snapchat, that usually brings up a lot of issues with friends being jealous or upset that people are hanging out without them. And obviously, this leads to the potential that people who don't necessarily know your child or the youth you're working with can see their location. Obviously, that's a problem. Another problem with Snapchat specifically is that, yes, it is set to expire after a certain amount of time, right? However, there are apps where someone can download an app onto their phone so that when they get Snapchats, they will automatically download onto that person's phone without informing the person. Because now when you take a screenshot on your phone, if you take it directly of the Snapchat, that person will be alerted, right? With this, it won't alert them at all. So they won't know that you saved their content onto their phone. So if it's, you know, risque content, they have that. What was I going to say? There was also, oh, and also there's also the lower tech version of that, which is just, you know, using your phone to take a picture of it on your other phone. You know, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It doesn't have to be an app automatically saving it. You can just take a picture with another phone. And that will never alert the person, obviously. So there are quite a few problems that you can run into with Snapchat. Do you want to advance that slide? Google Meets. So I'm going to kind of go through this one quick because I think that most of us are kind of aware of what it is. So it's part of the Google suite of products. Google Meets combined with Google Chat used to be Google Hangouts. They have, for whatever reasons within the company, split those into different apps. On Google Meets, users can video chat, instant message, share photos, kind of the same as you can with any of the other apps we've discussed so far. A big plus for this is that to register, the account must be linked to Google+. So that's Google's social networking tool, or at the very least, you have to have a Gmail account. So there is at least something backing up that account. So that is what I can say about that one. Chat roulette. Okay, so this one had a little bit less knowledge on a lot of people's parts. For me personally, I think that Chat Roulette, the website version, was in its heyday when I was in college, around, you know, 2009, 2010-ish. You know, me and my suite mates would get on Chat Roulette and you just get on the website or the app. You click on it, you don't have to put any info in, and it will automatically match you with a random other user for video chat. So you don't have to make an account. You don't have to have a profile. You just go on and it will automatically connect you to someone else's random video chat. So I think we can all see where this is probably going to lead, which is a lot of, Omegle is being promoted a lot on TikTok. Yeah. So Omegle and Chat Roulette are around the same kind of concepts, right? So it is a random user that you connect to, and a lot of the times, the thing you're going to see is going to be sexual in nature, or, you know, drug use, or, you know, other potentially risky behaviors. But it also opens up that portal for somebody to speak to another user. So, you know, if you've got youth at like a sleepover or whatever, automatically connecting to somebody that maybe they think is like a cute boy. No, there's no cost associated with this. It's just a free app. It's a free website. So yeah, it will just automatically connect you. So that is obviously kind of nerve-wracking to hear. I believe that was the last one we had on the list. Okay, so you want to go back one slide just so I can say one thing. I just want to say about, I also had on the poll, no, the other one, but that's okay. I also had on the poll Instagram, which obviously I didn't actually include in the slides, but I just want to bring up the fact that I think a thing that not a lot of providers, not a lot of family members are aware of with Instagram is that a lot of kids, first of all, Instagram will lead to some issues with self-confidence, which can be, as we'll talk later, an entryway to grooming. However, they can also open up Finstas, which is a fake Instagram, which so you give one Instagram to a parent to let them, look at that one looks fine. But then you have a second account, which is, your real one, which is where you're posting everything, that they don't want you to see. So it's just something good to consider to check out Instagram as well. We won't be touching on those specific apps here today, but it's a good idea. So now we can go back to the kick case.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Jess.
So obviously we see a lot of cases with different apps, but those are kind of the most common ones that we're seeing. So those are the ones specifically that we wanted to cover. And Yubo, I did not know about until we got this case, and I was a little surprised that only 3% knew about it. I thought it'd be a little higher. So I was glad to know that I wasn't the only one though. So I just wanted to give you guys a couple case examples of some of the cases that we saw in that March. So the case that we had with Kik was a 50-year-old man who had befriended a 16-year-old girl over Kik. They had started innocently chatting, which escalated into sending photos and videos, which escalated and then sending inappropriate photos and inappropriate videos to each other. He had her meet him at a local dollar store. He had paid for her to get piercings. So the grooming kind of started escalating. They eventually made plans to meet up at a local hotel, and the man is actually married, and the woman showed up at the hotel, created a huge scene. The police were called, and the police arrived at the hotel. So it was later discovered that he had also been advertising her on Kik to try to sell her for sex, either to his friends and people he knew or complete strangers. So he was charged with rape third and criminal sex act in the third. And at the time they were looking at charging mom with endangering the welfare of a child, and she actually was charged. So the mother of the 16-year-old girl was actually driving her to meet with this man. She was driving her to the hotel. She was aware of what was happening and made comments about, well, they're in a relationship, and, well, she's 16 and there's not really much I can do. So she was charged with endangering the welfare of a child, which we were pretty glad to see. So we did refer her to our Safe Harbor project. She wasn't overly engaged with us, and she obviously had some very concerning mental health issues because she really viewed that she was in a relationship with this man. So we referred her to a program at Family and Children's Society that's here locally, that's called the Journey Project, and they deal with much more intensive sexual abuse and sexual exploitation cases. So we really wanted to make sure that she had her mental health taken care of. So she was admitted into that program. She was removed from her mother and placed into foster care. She did run away from that foster care and was put into another foster home, which she did run away from that one too. So she was, they were having a really difficult time finding another placement for her due to her unsafe behaviors. And last I knew, they were looking for like an RTF type placement for her. So the next case we had was with Yubo. So again, Stephanie had kind of said that this was like a Tinder app for youth. So we had a 20-year-old youth or man that was outreaching to the 16-year-old girl. He actually lived in a different state, and he was traveling over state lines to meet her. He was taking her to different Airbnbs and different hotels. They started having sex when she was about 14 years old and continued that sexual relationship over 2 years. And then he had started forcibly raping her, and it was coming to a point where she would wake up and he was having sex with her while she was sleeping. And then it did come out that he was starting to take videos and pictures of her and of them having sex, and he was distributing them. And then he was using that as a way to start controlling her and manipulating her and just putting that kind of fear into her. So he was arrested and charged with rape second, and criminal sex act in the second. This is another interesting case where mom was not, she was sort of kind of preventing it, but not really. Like she wasn't really taking all the precautions that we felt that she could. And then it was interesting because they had initially taken her down to the police station versus the Child Advocacy Center, which we had found out about it and sent an advocate down to be with her. And mom just kind of seemed like annoyed to be there. She was stating that she was hungry and, how long is this kind of going to take, because she wanted to go get something to eat. So I just found it interesting in the last two cases that we kind of had that non-supportive parent that we're going to kind of talk about when we talk more about the grooming. So you'll kind of see more about how that comes into play a little bit. And then the other case we had with Snapchat. So this was a 16-year-old girl who went over to her friend's house for a sleepover. That friend's parents provided her with alcohol and the drug K2. If you're not familiar with that, it's like a synthetic cannabis. She had woken up in the morning and she had her clothes on, but she didn't have her underwear on. So she was kind of like, she didn't remember what had happened because she was extremely inebriated. But she kind of knew, something was off because she didn't have her underwear on anymore. She was later sent videos of herself through Snapchat of the friend's older brother sexually assaulting her. And he also continued to send her pornography via Snapchat as well. So he is awaiting county court for disposition of a plea to 2 months in jail and 10 years probation. She did get an order of protection because he kind of started harassing her after that. He continued sending her different things through Snapchat. So she was able to get an order of protection through that. She has been extremely engaged in our Safe Harbor program. She has met several times with our case manager, really just working through, all those feelings that she was experiencing. We also got her into counseling at Crime Victims Assistance Center, so she's been doing the program and counseling simultaneously. So those are some of the cases. Before we get into the grooming, though, just to touch base real quick, the case we had with TikTok was we had an 11-year-old who was caught doing butt dances for 60-year-old men on TikTok. So she was being encouraged by these older men to do these dances for them. And then the case that we had with Chat Roulette was a 50-year-old man that was teaching a 10-year-old about sex. So he was talking to him about sex. He was asking him, questions. Have you ever seen a man's penis? He was teaching the 10-year-old about sex. So that was kind of the case that we had with Chat Roulette too. None of us in the Child Advocacy Center were familiar with Chat Roulette. And I encourage some of you, if you are not, to go on this, because I myself was a little shocked, and I sit on a lot of community committees and I have told them all about this. So if you are not familiar, so you can simply go on the website, and the only question it asks you is if you are ready to enable your camera. And if you check yes, you are automatically matched with somebody via webcam, completely live. And you can lie about your age and say that you're 18 and older, so you can hit like the explicit version. And we just saw person after person after person masturbating, smoking marijuana. It literally went from masturbating to smoking marijuana to masturbating to smoking marijuana, just video after video, and you are just matched with these people live. So easy to for our small children to connect on this. So Just a little side note on those.
And once again, I will say that that the other app that operates that way is Omegle, just in case you guys want to write that one down.
All right, so we're going to kind of talk a little bit about grooming now. So grooming is defined as a preparatory process in which a perpetrator gradually gains a person or organization's trust with the intent to be sexually abusive. And the victim is usually a child, teen, or vulnerable adult. And what we've seen in grooming too is it's not only the child that's being groomed, but we also can see how the parents are being groomed as well. Especially in those two cases that I had talked about, you could kind of see how the moms weren't overly concerned because in a way, I think that they had been groomed through the process too about, oh, well, you know, my daughter feels like she's in a relationship, she's not feeling violated, so kind of what's the problem? So you can kind of see you know, how the family can be groomed as a whole, and it's not necessarily just the child. And Stephanie, feel free to jump in whenever. The purpose of grooming a victim is one, to overcome resistance. So this is using careful and planned progression. Offenders usually try to normalize what they're doing, like everybody does it. You know, this is good. This is a good thing. You know, they'll try to just really normalize it and to minimize, you know, to desensitize the victim. They want to maintain access to the child in any way that they can. So they'll find different ways to access them, what time works for them, you know, and just put themselves in different situations to make themselves available to the child. And then they want to minimize the child's disclosure. So they might do different things by instilling guilt and fear into the child, or shame. They might make comments about, you know, your family's going to be angry at you if they find out what you've been doing. You know, anything to try to keep that child from disclosing or reporting. They might make comments like, you know, now we're partners in crime. And I just recently was on one of the, and I see that Stephanie quoted the session that we just attended. We've been attending the Crimes Against Children conference through the Texas Child Advocacy Center, and they had a great presentation by Jim Tanner, and he gave a couple of really interesting statistics that 60 to 80% of children don't report sexual abuse until adulthood. 20% never disclose. 58% delay their disclosures. So they might just, you know, disclose maybe a year or two, or even like 5 years or more. So we just thought that those were kind of interesting statistics. So just because we've been seeing a lot of children that have been recently disclosing for things that might have happened 5 or 6 years ago. And, you know, a lot of that happens as the child's growing and maturing and going through puberty and starting to understand what's happening to their body, and then realizing what had happened to them was not okay. The process of grooming, so there's several different things that groomers do. One is to form a special bond with the victim. So they do this primarily by establishing an emotional connection to the child. So anything they can kind of find in common with them, make them feel important. And then this, you know, they can learn their vulnerabilities and easily exploit them. They do this through reliance, cause the victim to rely on the offender. So we saw this through the pandemic because some of the kids were so isolated. So they were home doing school remotely. And you can obviously tell, like, children are very social and they're looking for those outlets and they're looking for those connections. And when they find somebody, maybe online or through an app or somebody to talk to, it makes them feel good and it's exciting and it's new. And the groomers know this, and they rely on this. So they do different things to make that happen. They may make comments about, you know, parents don't understand them like they do. I understand what's happening with you through this, whole situation. This must be really hard for you. And just, making them feel comfortable and understood and that they have somebody to talk to. They might reduce the child's resistance to the offensive behavior. And then keep the child in the victimizing role for as long as they possibly can too.
That one is from the last slide. The last one should be, it should be trapped. So that's preventing the disclosure or escape. Sorry about that. It got carried over from the last slide. Sorry.
That's okay. And then they want to keep the child in the victimizing role for as long as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so process of grooming the victims online.
So so these are the ways that they specifically do it online. Go through those levels of the BART. That last one again should be trap. I don't know how that didn't get fixed, but anyway, so these kind of go through those same steps that Jim Tanner mentioned, the BRAT, the bond, reliance, attenuate, and trap. And these are some ways that we've seen it online. Jess, sorry, you can.
Oh, that's okay. So we found 17.4% of groomers make online contact. So that's kind of why we want to focus more on like the online, because I think this is happening more and more as children are getting so much more access to technology, either through school, especially through the pandemic, and they were given Chromebooks through school and different tablets and stuff to do their schoolwork. Another way that perpetrators are reaching out to kids is through gaming systems. We actually did have a case where a boy was downstairs in his basement. He was playing video games. He had met like an older man who wanted him to start sending pictures of him. It slowly escalated to him wanting to have him take his shirt off and send a picture of him with no shirt on. And then the dad was upstairs playing the video game and it started streaming across the TV upstairs. So the dad was kind of like, what is happening? So fortunately, he was able to catch that quickly and have a conversation with the child. The scary thing about the games online is that because it's internet based, is that the person is extremely hard to be traced. We actually work really closely with one of the agents from the FBI that works here locally in Binghamton, and we've had her do a couple presentations. And she says that people can even like send messages to youth through a gaming system and then retract the message back. And because it's internet based, it's not saved. So it's very, very hard to kind of hunt these people down because there's no way to kind of trace it back to who had sent that. So the gaming systems, I don't think a lot of people think of that. I think they think more of like the apps and stuff, but the gaming systems we're kind of seeing a little bit more come through that, where somebody will start having a conversation with the child and they might think they're playing with another 12-year-old kid. And it could be like a 50-year-old, man or woman that's reaching out to them and they don't know because they can't identify them. So the gaming is really kind of scary.
The gaming is a little scary, yes. It also, just taking that as an example, it also like really highlights really well the different steps of grooming the victim, if we just use that as an example. So for bonding, the victim might get messaged by the perpetrator within the game. When we look at reliance, we've seen a lot of cases where the perpetrator will promise the youth in-game purchases. So it may not be physical, tangible goods that they're sending kids, but they might be buying them skins. They might be buying them like, different in-app purchases. Skins is specific to Fortnite usually, but there are a lot of different ways that they can kind of give kids incentives within the game without ever sending anything to a house. So there won't be that kind of level for the parent to notice and see. And then again, I think that the attenuate is pretty much the same as it is anywhere else, introducing more and more inappropriate actions. We talked about that with the TikTok case, right? With the dances, and then it kind of got a little bit more inappropriate. And then again, that last one should be trap, but This is the one we see a lot with shaming the youth. So this is where we see revenge porn being threatened. This is where we see a lot of that online exploitation, sexploitation situation. So shaming them for sending the nudes in the first place, threatening to send them out if they don't, do what they're supposed to be doing, or just like Jess said, straight up guilting them. Making them think that they're going to get in trouble. Everything's going to be on them if they get caught, so they need to be quiet about it. So yeah, I just wanted to run through when you were mentioning gaming. I think that's a really great kind of microcosm of how this kind of thing can happen.
Mm-hmm. So I think what we're seeing with a lot of the kids that are coming through Safe Harbor, we have so many that have this social media component. It's that need for just that affirmation from somebody, to comment on their looks and to let them know that they're beautiful and to have somebody to talk to and just to connect with. I mean, bottom line, we're all looking for connections with people and just to feel important. And some of them might promise to buy them things. And so you can just kind of see how it slowly starts out with just basic flattery, making that initial connection, and then it just, builds and builds and builds. And unfortunately, the two girls that we had really, truly felt like they were in relationships with these older men and didn't understand necessarily that what they were doing, wasn't okay. So we wanted to talk about what we were doing. We didn't want to just present this information without kind of any follow-up on different ways to help with these situations. So our education department, which Stephanie is a part of, she created this amazing flyer that we have parent packets that we give to every family that comes through the Child Advocacy Center. And Stephanie has created this flyer. It's front and back, and it just lists all the different apps and then how I can keep my child safe online. So it just gives some basic tips on things that parents can do. But these are kind of the apps that we are seeing. And I feel like we go through this periodically and take off ones that just aren't like cool anymore, and then add ones that are kind of coming out. Actually, I just had one of my staff give me a whole new list of ones I haven't even heard of that we now have to add to this. She went to a training and there's probably 6 new ones that I have never even heard of. So they're just constantly coming out with new ones. That FBI agent that I did talk about that does a lot of presentations for us, she gave the best advice is that if your child has an app on their phone, then you should have it too. And you should know everything that app does, and you should know every way to protect your child if they are using that app. And I just thought that was such great advice because you can see your kids have all these different apps and you think they're, they're just chatting with their friends and stuff, but you might not know all the capabilities of that app.
For sure. And I think I include that anytime I talk to parents, whenever I do education for parents, providers. I just talked about this in the Groom County Superintendent's Day conference a couple weeks ago. Whether you're a provider, whether you're a parent, you should really be looking at these apps and getting to know what the features are, what the potential privacy and security functions are, just so you know how to actually implement them on the phone, ways that people get around those social or security and privacy measures. And then just the basic, like Jess said, how the app, actually works. Like you get messages from people, you comment on people's things, you like people's things, whatever it is. It's just an extremely important thing to know exactly what's on your kids' phones. Okay. And this is just another example. And this was just a quick document I made for some local school districts. Had some questions about Chromebooks. So with the pandemic and the corresponding reliance on technology, we all saw this. Schools sent a lot of computers home, right? Sent a lot of Chromebooks home. Unfortunately, we found out through a couple of cases that they were not putting any privacy or safety settings on these computers before they were sending them out. obviously that can be an issue. So this was just a quick little, and some of it does rely on Googling, but this was a quick little document I made up for parents specifically to understand how to get on, Google Family Link, just some quick little safety basics. This is a one sheet handout I made. Basically just where to go to find the privacy settings. Like I said, the Family Link, which is Google's parental monitoring app, which I have some suggestions about parental monitoring apps on the other one as well, I believe. But yeah, so this is just a quick little document I made for local parents. And this has been a focus of some of our education. Okay, so this is just a couple of slides off of a presentation that I personally made and give to, it started out as the Protective Parenting series. So when we noticed the increase in social media cases back in March, it was actually April. I had to do the math in my head there. It was April when we decided to do the Protective Parenting series that we did. So we had a couple of webinars for parents that we put on our agency social media. So on our Facebook, I believe we sent it out to some schools, things like that. But we put together some presentations for the community. Mine that I put together was the Youth Tech and Consent presentation, specifically aimed to talking about consent education and how that can be utilized online. That's kind of I love talking about consent education. I was previously at Family Planning of South Central New York, so it's a topic I feel super comfortable talking about. And then my boss, Megan Gorton, actually did a presentation on grooming specifically. And in those presentations, we through this one, I talked about why we should discuss consent. I went through the different apps that we see, kind of the same way we did with you guys. I think I put a little bit more on there because it was specifically aimed towards parents. But in both of those presentations, we focused a lot on giving parents the basics. So either that's the basics of social media knowledge, the basics of grooming knowledge, kind of the same way we gave you guys. And something we didn't touch on in this particular presentation was consent knowledge. So just because we really want to work in prevention and we want to make sure that we're cutting these things off at the pass, so we're trying to get parents to have these conversations with kids, have conversations about what they're seeing online, have conversations about what they're seeing in person. Consent comes up with is a huge topic right now with social media, solely because of, these TikTok challenges or whatever it is, with kids touching other kids inappropriately, with kids sending kind of mean or hateful or sexual content to each other. Consent plays a lot into what kids are seeing online. And that's just a little slide I did on why we discuss consent. It's important to kind of cut off abusers of any stripe, honestly. So this is just kind of some information that we gave to our local community here in Groom County. I will say we were on a little bit of short notice because we did it in April after we had those cases in March. And it was around the time that there were some big political actions going on downtown that I think a lot of the attention got shifted to. So those events weren't as well attended as we would have liked, but I have had better success with those same presentations in, again, a local school district that we work with through the Department of Health in my department. That's outside of Safe Harbor funding, but we were able to do these youth tech and consent presentations, the grooming presentations with that school district for parents. They had an incentive. They could get gift cards. Those were furnished by the school district, but there's, if you have the budget line for it, that's something you could consider. So we really just put these presentations together in-house. We had some that we had done previously that worked out really well. I've actually given the youth tech and consent presentation now. I've given that to parents. I've given that to teens themselves, a modified version. And then I've also given it to school administrators to talk to parents and teens about. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of tailor content when you are giving these educational sessions. I don't know if every single safe harbor program has educators specifically within the department. But if you do, this is definitely something to consider, what your own county can support as far as, preventional education. And then and that's actually the last one. Oh my gosh, I thought we had more than that after there. So yeah, we've done a lot of and again, I think it's really important to give that education. I've given that youth tech and consent. I've been scheduled with the United Way to give it specifically to teens that they were seeing in their organization. Like I said, I gave that to the superintendent's day, just to give people that basic information, kind of being aware of your kid may be feeling vulnerable during this time. They're online a lot more during this time. That's a pretty good combo to create a great situation in which grooming can happen. And that can happen with specifically the victims, but it can happen with the surrounding community as well. We see that with people who have a great image within the community, but then they're online, having certain interactions with youth in different situations. So that's all to say that we have focused a lot on preventive education here since we've noticed this increase in social media cases. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica and Stephanie. I really, really appreciate that. I'm going to give people a few seconds if they have questions to type them in the chat. There are a slew of requests in the chat for copies of the handouts. So if you are willing and able, if you could send them to me, and I will happily disperse them among the group. So we'll make sure that those awesome handouts get handed to all of our participants. And to thank you to Nick and Taylor, who shared 2 other apps, one of which was on your handy dandy handout, Hoop and Discord, neither of which I have ever.
Discord I use all the time, but so Discord is, if you've ever used Slack for work, it's along kind of the same idea. So there's different rooms that you can be in, and usually it's used for gaming. That's what I personally use it for. I play Pathfinder. I'm a very big nerd. And a lot of people do use it for gaming, but with any other app or website or whatever that is mostly communication, that's voice chat, that's chatting chat, that's pictures, videos, whatever you want, people send through Discord. So there's always a possibility for those things.
Yeah, and it's so eye-opening because I think some of these apps, many of us are familiar with Facebook, although my teenagers informed me that is for old people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apparently I am. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, those I think are the more common ones. And then all of these other ones you kind of hear about here or there, but Google Meets is something that I think most of us wouldn't think twice about. I know my daughter, when she was home during COVID, would meet with study groups, her teacher on Google Meets. So if you're a parent walking by or another teacher or some kind of supportive adult, and you see Google Meet up, you probably don't think anything of it because you think, oh, it's doing schoolwork, or, oh, it's Google Meet, it's harmless. So that's to keep in mind. I do want to stress something that we talked a lot about last year during our social media safety summit, which was, so this is a great spinoff on that, is that there's we cannot prevent youth from being on social media, right?
No, of course not.
Nature of they're not all bad. And there's, I myself got a TikTok because, as you said, Stephanie, parents should be familiar with the apps are on. And I watch a lot of cooking videos on TikTok. There are some benefits and some really good things out there.
There totally are.
Right. I think the premise is to be aware and knowledgeable and this power as supportive adults who really want to make a difference in our community. Jen shared that they have had youth being groomed through Discord in Tioga. And you have another request to present to another county. So Chelsea, I'll connection for you. I actually
email's right there.
I have a question. So in the very beginning, Jessica and Stephanie, you talked about how many cases, it was disclosed that there had been inappropriate photos sent. There was a really great breakdown of the number of referrals you've had and how social media played into that. How did that information get disclosed? Was it via like law enforcement referrals? Was it youth disclosure? Was it immediately at intake, or did it take some time after the fact to figure that out? How were you able to get that information from the young people to have that data? Because I think that's super.
We get multiple referrals from like PINS and Department of Social Services and Children's Home of Wyoming Conference, and we have many like Hillside and Stillwater, many case management services agencies. So those were referrals based on community agencies and their work that they're doing with youth. So that's like what they know that the youth are engaged in. I thought it was so interesting that it kind of all meant the same thing, but they kind of all like use different language around it. So that's kind of why I kept it that way, because I thought it was interesting that it all kind of meant the same thing. But
no, it really is. And I like that you kept it the same, because it does give us different, perspectives and points of view and ways to look at how the young people look at things. Because I think for, something we've talked about and learned is that for some of these young people, this is considered normative behavior. This is what their peers are doing. This is, if you want to be popular and if you want to fit in and if you want to be liked, et cetera, there are certain expectations. So I think that language is so important. I was just curious to see if the youth had actually disclosed this or if it had been figured out during an investigation. So, I mean, the important part is that we know, right? So, and you have another request to present. So I will make those connections between all of you. Happily. Yeah, this is one of the perks of doing an event like this is we're able to make those connections. I am going to wrap us up. I'll give another minute for any other questions or comments. I would like to extend my personal thanks to Jessica and Stephanie for their time and participation today and their hard work. And I will see hopefully all of you tomorrow at 12:30 for 2 more awesome presentations. So thanks everyone. Have a wonderful Monday evening and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye.